Well, good morning, Greater Fort Lauderdale. I'm Bob Swindell, President and CEO of the Greater Fort Lauderdale Alliance. Welcome to our 8th event in the Leadership Speakers Series. Today, we look forward to a very enlightening discussion between two amazing leaders from media, business, and the nonprofit world. Alex Villoch, CEO of the Baptist Health Foundation, in conversation with Robyn Motley, Senior Vice President of Revenue Optimization for AARP and General Manager for AARP Media. For those of you that are 55 or older, I'm sure you've gotten some communications from AARP, and I have to admit that I am one of those folks that have received information from AARP. Sort of knows that you've arrived as part of the Silver Tsunami. Before we begin, I want to thank the series sponsors who are listed on the screen. Thank you, Maggie, and the South Florida Business Journal, our media sponsor. Our sponsors, and especially the South Florida Business Journal, have been fantastic from the very beginning when Gail pitched the idea of a speaker series. So we really appreciate that support and the support from our many sponsors. And now on to the program. Today's moderator is CEO of the Baptist Health Foundation, where she has oversight of the organization's government and community relations, hospitality, and international divisions. You may think it's interesting we talk about hospitality international, but many of you, if you think about it, we do a lot of international business in healthcare. The quality of healthcare in South Florida has a phenomenal reputation, and folks travel from all over the world to come to South Florida for medical treatment. And Baptist Health is a huge part of that business. Alex joined Baptist Health South Florida in June of 2019. She was previously the East Region publisher for McClatchy, a national news media company. Please help me welcome Alexandra, as we like to call her, Alex Villoch, and she will take over from here. Alex, you have the mic.
Thank you very much. I'm really thrilled and excited to be having this conversation this morning with Robyn Motley. Robyn is currently the Senior Vice President, Revenue Optimization for AARP Services, Inc., and General Manager for AARP Media. In that capacity, she directs AARP's multimedia sales and operations for AARP's print and digital properties, including AARP the magazine, AARP Bulletin, and AARP.org. Prior to joining AARP, Motley served as the Regional Senior Vice President and Chief Financial Officer for the Sun Sentinel, the Orlando Sentinel, and WSFL South Florida TV. So welcome, Robyn. I'm so excited to be sharing this time with you this morning. Let's start off with a question. I think, Bob mentioned if you're over a certain age, you kind of get those AARP bulletins, but what is really AARP? Can you kind of fill us in like a little bit about AARP?
Sure. So AARP is a nonprofit, nonpartisan membership organization for people 50 plus. And our mission really is to fight for and equip people to choose how they live as they age. And we do that by advocating for everyone 50 plus, including the work of the AARP Foundation, whose vision is a country free of poverty, where no older person feels vulnerable from income insecurity or housing insecurity or isolation. So that's what we do for everyone 50 plus, but we also offer a wide range of products and services. Those mailers that you get in the mail from our business partners who offer products and services for those 50 plus, our 38 million members, including insurance, healthcare, and financial products, as well as discounts that members use every day for dining and more these days, as Bob mentioned, for travel. In addition, we have the benefit of our publications. So AARP, the magazine, and AARP Bulletin, which collectively publish 16 times a year. And they always cover topics of healthcare and finance and kind of lifestyle. So that's the reality. Some of the myths that I wanted to debunk, you don't have to be 50 plus. In fact, while we focus on and advocate for people 50 plus, you can actually join at any age. And so there are 30 somethings who are AARP members, and they too are taking advantage of the discounts. And also some of the younger cohorts joined for their parents to take advantage of the services. Another myth that I would like to debunk is our name really is AARP. We changed our name probably 20 years ago from the American Association of Retired People in acknowledgement of the fact that many of our members by choice or necessity are not retired. So call us AARP or call us Aarp, which is how we're affectionately known.
I think it's a little known fact that the fascinating history of AARP that it was originally founded by a woman in 1958. Yes. And the current CEO is also a woman. This is kind of, unfortunately, still rather unique in today's corporate world.
It is unfortunate and unique in today's corporate world. So Dr. Ethel Anders Percy founded AARP, and the backstory there is that she was a retired school principal, and she went to visit one of her teachers and found her living in a chicken coop because it was all that she could afford. And right then and there, she decided not to say that changes were needed or advocate for change. She decided to roll up her sleeves and make change happen. And I think that that is what I see in our current CEO too. They are both passionate leaders in advocating for our constituents and finding a way to make positive social change.
So let's talk a little bit about you and your fascinating trajectory in your career. Did you always know that you wanted to be in media, or how did you kind of move around the ways that you did?
You know, I didn't, and it was a kind of good fortune. I was in my first year at business school, and everyone scrambles to figure out what they're going to do for the summer. And I happened to interview with the Washington Post, my hometown newspaper. And I was fascinated. I grew up with my parents reading the Post. I can remember Sundays, I was reading the comics, and later on I was reading the other parts of the paper. And so I thought it was intriguing, and I went to intern with them. And I just found it fascinating that the paper put out a daily miracle, a new unique product every day. And so during my internship, I was able to attend story conferences and understand the editorial side of the house. I went out on sales calls, and one very, very early morning, I actually delivered newspapers and helped start the presses. So I was hooked at that point. And after I graduated from business school, I was offered a position, and I worked there for 11 years and kind of worked my way up the ranks until I hit what I call a kind of a natural roadblock. And my boss was probably 5 or 6 years older than me, and her boss was not much older than that, and both very accomplished women, and not making any signs that they were going any place. And so I knew that my career was kind of stalled at that point, because I wanted to continue to rise up through the ranks. And then I got a phone call from a peer and a mentor at Tribune Company. And he said, look, I've been trying to get you to come and work for me. Now I'm leaving the organization, and I think you need to come and apply for my job. So, given my current situation, I kind of jumped at that opportunity.
You just mentioned a mentor. And there's a lot of discussions about the importance of having a mentor in your career. Can you talked about this one person who sort of reeled you in and pulled you into this next job, that they saw an opportunity for you that maybe you didn't see yourself? I mean, I've had those situations where somebody's called me in my career and told me I needed to be somewhere that I probably had not thought about. Can you talk a little bit about that sort of importance? You talked to me about one time about how important it was to have your squad. Is that the same as your mentoring?
I think my squad is kind of different, but I see my mentors, and I've had several, pushing me and challenging me, and not necessarily telling me what to do, but challenging and questioning and helping me come up with the answers that maybe I was reluctant to ask and answer for myself. So I've had several mentors. This one person that I mentioned kind of took me under his wing when I came into the newspaper industry. And I know that one of my long-term mentors, Howard Greenberg, who was the president and CEO of Sun Sentinel Company. And with others, just prodding me and asking me questions and helping me set my own direction again versus telling me what to do. And I think that my squad that you mentioned are people around me. So they could be peers, they could be my staff, but people who constantly challenge me to work outside of my comfort zone. So I think that you need people at all levels of the organization, not only helping you with your career specifically, but helping you kind of run the business. So I think all levels of mentorship and, you know, your posse are important.
So let me flip it. Given the help that we've each had along our way from mentors, our peers that have challenged us, you know, being a woman, especially a Black woman in corporate America, could not have been an easy path towards success. Can you talk a little bit about maybe some of the challenges, but I want to flip it into how you view your role in leadership today to help that next generation of young women in the workforce, to maybe with some of the things you've learned?
Sure. So I think that, you know, I was fortunate in that I had great parents and they set me up for success. They encouraged me to go to the right schools and be members of the right organization. And so I think when I was coming up through the ranks, I was I would say a safe choice to hire and to groom for the next level. But I think what I'd like to see is there not being a right choice, and that we as leaders embrace a great variety of diversity. And I think that people from different backgrounds, ethnicities, women, all different backgrounds, kind of help businesses make better business decisions. When you have diversity of thought and diversity of ideas, I think the work product you end up with is much better. And so I'm encouraging my co-leaders and those leaders coming up to not think that there is a path and that they have to attend the right schools and attend the right organizations and behave a certain way, because I think that waters down the diversity that we're all looking for.
Yeah, I think that is something that is so important. I think in media, it was very important for us to always have that diversity of voices, especially in the newsrooms, because we wanted to reflect the communities that we were representing. But I think it applies to every single industry, that you want to have a workforce that reflects the customers and the community that you are serving, because I think it makes for a better work product, but it also, I think, leads to more successful business. It's just, I always said, it's not only the good thing to do, but it's the right thing for the business side as well. How have you been able to, you know, beyond inside in your career directly in your business positions? I know that you have been very actively involved in nonprofit boards. Do you view that as also, you sit currently on the board of the Magazine Publishers of America, Habitat for Humanity, Rainbow House, one that's near and dear to my heart, Big Brothers Big Sisters. Why have you seen it as being important for women to be at the table in these boards outside of your sort of paid job?
So, you know, women don't always have the opportunity to sit in the boardroom in their current work environment, but many boards are looking for men and women to serve on, especially not-for-profit boards and volunteer boards. So it gives women the opportunity to have a leadership position that they might not otherwise be exposed to. And it helps you build your network and build your resume. It helps you learn to fundraise and ask for money. So it pushes many women outside of their comfort zone. And I think that they can parlay board experience to kind of career growth. So I think it's very important. And for me at this juncture in my career, I have served on a lot of volunteer boards, but my next goal is to serve on a paid board, because I think that it adds a level of cachet. You're paid for your opinion and your guidance. And I think that that's a step that more women need to take. I think I saw a statistic recently that only about 23% of boards have are women. And so I think that, like women in leadership in general, we need to change that percentage.
Yeah, I think for many of us, we start serving on these non-paid, nonprofit boards, but then it's really making that jump to paid board seats that many people sort of struggle. Sort of, how do you do that? Any insights?
Well, I think that it has to be a change in the mindset. Many board presidents and CEOs value a diversity of experience. So they want someone with a financial background. They want marketers. They want, R&D people. But I think that it's an oversight not to also want diversity of gender and diversity in general. So I think that a more diverse board kind of looks more holistically at the business, and it focuses on what you were talking about before, kind of the clientele that you're serving, and they care more about the members or the constituents and the employees, and again, having a long-term focus versus just a what is this year going to look like, a top line and bottom line. And so that's not just having women on the board, that's having a diversity of thoughts and opinions that can look more holistically at a business.
I think that one of the things that I have found in this space is, while you have a lot of corporations who say that are looking at, it's how do we bridge the gap? Part of what I've done is really, you have to put yourself out there. There are a number of headhunting firms that specialize in board recruitment. That is what they do. And so you have to sort of start making those connections and letting people know that you're interested in serving in a board so that your name starts getting floated out there. So it takes a little bit of work on both sides because they're seeking, and I think that there is that strong desire to get that diversity on the corporate boards, but we ourselves have to do a little bit of homework and put ourselves out there to let people know that we're interested in doing this. It's work. People think that it's just fun, but you got to commit yourself to serving on 8 to 10 or 12 board meetings a year. You got to prep. You got to sit on committees. It all sounds wonderful, but it's an additional sort of side job on top of your regular job. But I think it's crucially important, and one that I think we all as leaders should help others sort of get ready for that, because there's a very short window for serving on some of these corporate boards. They all have sort of an aging out. Many of them have a rule that by 72, you're off corporate boards or a certain age. So I think it's something that as we continue to look, you've talked about the browning of America and how important it is for strategic reasons. And as a leader, you want to talk a little bit about why this is so important for companies to understand this?
Sure. So I think that we all know the trending demographic that over the next 20 years, there's not going to be a majority. So we are going to truly live up to our historic name as the melting pot. And so it's very important that, again, from a leadership perspective, that we understand the different constituents that we serve, and to be naive about kind of the trends and what different populations want, I think would be a shortfall for any organization. So it's not, I think you mentioned, it's not just the right thing to do, but it's the right thing to move your business forward.
Talking about what motivates you in the workplace, and you strike me as being very, very much like me, that we're very driven. So how do you kind of get a work-life balance as part of managing your role in the workplace?
You have to set your own boundaries and know what is most important to you. And I think that you can have work-life balance, but I don't know, at least I haven't been able to achieve everything I want all at once. And so you have different things at different times in your career, and kind of what your priorities change, and you have non-negotiables. And so I know that peers have talked about, needing to be the last person turning out the lights. And that was kind of what labeled you as, really driven and a strong leader and committed to your job. But I like to work hard for the time that I have. And of course, there's times that I have to work really long hours and fly across the country and visit clients, but I also try to kind of be home, on Fridays to have dinner with my family and have a weekend. Doesn't always work, but kind of those are some of my non-negotiables that, I set my priorities, and people understand and can live with your personal priorities. And I think that more and more companies have to look at that work-life balance. I mean, let's look at this past year and the flexibility that companies have had to give their employees. And many companies continue to generate the revenue and put out products and services. And so I think this pandemic has taught us kind of a new normal. And so I think business will continue to change around kind of the work from home paradigm shift.
I think that as we emerge from this sort of great hibernation post-pandemic, we're all going to be challenged as leaders in our organizations to continue to exhibit the level of flexibility that we offered our employees. I think that now that our employees have gotten the sense, and particularly in South Florida, where I think we both primarily have our workforce, people say all of a sudden my work-life balance is so different because I'm not sitting in traffic for a 1 hour commute or an hour and a half commute each way. I am more productive. I'm happier at home. And as we emerge from this, being able to have the flexibility to recognize that and say, I think our biggest challenge as leaders coming into the next 5 to 10 years is going to be talent, retaining talent and acquisition of talent. And it's going to be at a premium, and offering that flexibility. I think we need to be able to sort of keep open minds.
You're absolutely right. And actually, the majority of my staff is actually in New York. And so all of my staff, there's one person who lives in the city who can actually walk to work. So they're on a train, a bus, kind of a ferry. And their commutes are anywhere from an hour to an hour and a half plus. And so what I found is that they're using that time to be more productive, and that our output is greater because they're refreshed and they wake up and they go to their computer and they're starting to work, not starting their commute. And so it would be equally hard for me to dial that back, because then you have to decide what is it that we don't do in those hour to 3 hours that my staff would be commuting, and they're not actively working. Now, I do challenge them to not burn the candle at both ends, but they are happier, and they can, help their kids with homework during the middle of the day, or have a lunch break and eat with their family. And so those kinds of trade-offs are important to people, and I don't think that we can ever go back.
Yeah, and I think you've hit the nail back. I don't think we can go back, and we will lose great talent if we choose to not ignore that. Now, granted, there are many industries that need to be face-to-face. They need to be in person, but a lot of our positions don't. And so it's trying to find that right balance. I loved how you talked about the work-life balance. And I always talk about it that people think they view work-life balance as being like, I view it as a seesaw. Everybody remembers seesaws out in playgrounds? Yeah. And they think that the seesaw needs to be like equal on both sides. And I say, no, work-life balance is that sometimes, one part of your life needs to be all hands on deck because you've got this project and everything gets put to the wayside. And then other sides, there's something that's personal that needs to shift, that you need to take care of. And it's not a perfect equilibrium. It's more like a seesaw. And that every once in a while, I have to imagine that to get me back and saying, wait a minute, how do I dial back for me personally, and for me to also help my team understand that you can't be 100% the wife, the mother, the caretaker, as well as 100% in the office. That sometimes something has to give, and that's all right. because I think as women, we feel this tremendous guilt sometimes about doing certain things that are necessary. Can you kind of maybe talk about maybe some of the challenges you have faced and how you've dealt with them from that personal perspective?
So women are, you're correct, by the lion's share of caregivers, whether it's caring for children or caring for an elderly parent or caring for a relative that maybe is sick. It always seems to most times fall on women. And so you do experience that guilt, but then you have conversations with your boss and with your team, and you realize the commonality of experience. And so I think that we put the guilt on ourselves, and it's not necessarily being imposed by the organization, because everyone is struggling kind of with work-life balance. And so I try to communicate with my team what the challenges that I'm going through, and people pick up kind of the slack, and we help each other out. And you're right, it is a seesaw, it is ever changing. And so, that's why it's great to always have a team to go through challenges with, whether it's a personal challenge or a business challenge.
You talked a little bit about non-negotiables, which is one of my favorites. Long time ago, I had somebody who coached me and was a mentor. He was a client who gave me this incredible gift of saying, if you have a very clearly defined list of your non-negotiables, both for your personal as well as professional life, they will keep guiding you those times where you have sort of a fork in the road to make a big decision. You shared a little bit of some of your personal non-negotiables. Any work non-negotiables you might have?
I think kind of honesty and integrity and transparency, non-negotiables. I've been fortunate in that I haven't been pushed so much to kind of cook the books or to do anything untoward, but I mean, that certainly would be kind of a line in the sand. I remember, and this wasn't necessarily non-negotiable, but early on in my career, I think it was a pivotal moment. All of the Tribune 11 newspapers were actually down here in South Florida presenting their budgets. And, I was at Daily Press at the time, the smallest newspaper in the chain. And so I'm listening to all of the newspapers present in front of me, and all getting called to task for, well, can't you generate more revenue? And I'm looking at, the trajectory, and I think there is probably another, several million that you can generate. And so same story when it came to me and I was presenting my budget, the CEO of the company challenged me, and I just said, well, I can, follow corporate guidance and make the budget number look whatever you want it to be. But I would rather be forthright and honest with you now rather than 6 months from now when we're not making our plan and we've got to kind of pivot and figure out what to do with expenses. And so again, I've carved out a career by being honest and upfront with people, even if I'm sharing information that they don't necessarily want to hear.
Right. Yeah, I think that's very much, I've always talked about integrity being at the forefront, about working for a company that had that integrity in their dealings with the community, with their employees, and how that was sort of a non-starter for me. And you would tend to think that everyone operates that way, except every day you see stories of companies that are not operating that way.
Keeping separate books is like, well, what did you think you were doing when you were keeping separate books? That's an admission in of itself.
So, I think along the way, I'm sure you've met some very great leaders and some not great. I think I've learned as much from the not great as from the great. Any insights, some that maybe have stood out, or less than the names, but some of the traits that maybe have inspired your leadership style?
Yeah, I think that kind of sharing the air and being collaborative and inclusive has been a trait of many of my mentors. They don't think that the organization, even if their title is CEO or president, they don't think that it's all about them. They think it's about the team and how the team gets things done. And so but they also kind of set a clear vision and kind of rally the troops around that vision and give the team the tools that they need to be successful. So you make it all about the staff and how they can help you lead the organization. And I think that that's what kind of separates good leaders from not so great leaders, about how they manage the people and they set a vision and goal and help you work towards it. What about you, Alex? What have you seen in good and great leaders and not so great leaders?
I think is that ability to bring people, have people, create an atmosphere, let me just say, where people are allowed to do their best. And I found that people do their best work where there isn't an environment of fear, where people aren't scared. If I say that I'm not going to make these budget numbers, is my job at risk for telling the truth? And so trying to create an environment where saying, we will do our best by being forthright, by being truthful, by being honest, and creating an environment where people really feel that way, that they don't have to be in fear of their job if they do the right thing. I think is really important. And I've worked in industries, for example, in the airline industries, safety and security was incredibly important. And so we had, the number one goal at Unite, not goal, but it was, everyone could say it was safety above all else. And it meant in whatever position you were in, you could call out if you saw something that you thought was unsafe. And it meant that nobody, no matter if you were the CEO, could call out the person, because that trumped everything else. And so it was, everybody worked within this very clearly defined sort of mission and vision. And that, I think, delineating that as a leader and creating that atmosphere makes everybody feel that they can contribute. I think you talked about making sure that everybody is part of a team. Not one, it's sharing that limelight. It's you do it because of everybody underneath you. You don't get to do what you do every day and be successful on your own. You need everybody else on your team, and recognizing that and giving people opportunities to sort of shine and help them. I think one of the biggest things at me at this point in my career is helping others sort of say, what is their path? What do they want to achieve? And sort of helping them develop in that way. And, they laugh that my door is always open. If anybody wants a cup of coffee, they can come and take 5 minutes with me, And
you're absolutely right, Alex, about feeling that you're in a safe work environment. And I want people to tell me when things are going well, but more importantly, when things are not going well. And I feel that if you manage in an atmosphere of fear, you miss a lot, and you don't see the pitfalls out in front of you. And so even if it's not something I want to hear, and I've worked for managers who, don't want to hear the bad news, and I kind of try and sneak it in there, but you are going in with a little bit of trepidation, and you may be sugarcoating something, and I would rather someone just come out and tell me in a forthright manner kind of what's going on or what they see.
Yeah. One of the things that hit me that we share is that you've lived now 7 years, I think, down here in Florida permanently.
Yes.
So you've made a very...
This is my second run at Florida. So I lived here when I was working for Sun Sentinel. I moved back to DC, which is my hometown, and now I'm back in South Florida.
So it sounds to me like you've made a very conscientious decision about having South Florida be your primary home, regardless of where your job takes you, all over the country, all over the world. So talk to me a little bit about that choice and how you managed that in your career decision.
Sure. So, it's not easy getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning and flying to DC, at least 3 times a month, or flying to New York. But, I get to come home and it's another day in paradise. So the South Florida lifestyle is just very relaxed and casual. And, we play hard, but we work hard too. So I just kind of love that environment. And, lots to do in terms of entertainment and great restaurants. And so that's great for lifestyle. Made fast friends who live here. And so, I still miss DC, and I will travel to DC and maybe eventually have another home there, but South Florida is my home.
Yeah, I think that this area provides a lot of distinct opportunities for business people and women leaders in particular. I view us as being, this whole area of South Florida, the whole region, is very young and developing in comparison to other more established cities across the nation where, corporations have been there for hundreds of years and things like that. So I think that there's more opportunity. There's an incredible amount of entrepreneurship and creativity. And what has always led me to make the decisions to be in South Florida was the diversity that we had here, the diversity at the table that is sort of built in just by the nature of we're already where America, the rest of America will be in a few years. So it presents challenges, but incredible opportunities for us.
Right, and the international diversity too, just being so close to Latin America and just the people from all over the world who gravitate here. So it's a lifestyle choice that people are choosing for themselves. It's a very livable city. The cost of living is not low, but it is lower than so many other parts of the country. Right. So it's a great choice for companies moving here and for individuals who choose to live here.
What advice would you give to the next generation of female leaders with what you know today?
Sure. I would say take risks. I would say be resilient. Your career path doesn't always follow the trajectory that you had set out for yourself. And so one thing I do want to talk about is kind of a challenge that I had in my career and then kind of what that did for me. But and kind of lead authentically, lean on your strengths and surround yourself with a team that complements kind of your skills. And kind of have fun and choose a career. And you may have to try several different careers like we did before you find a career that you're passionate about, because we all spend an awful lot of time at work, and to go to work and not to at least like your job, if not love your job, it is a challenge. And you will stunt your career if you're not passionate about what you do. So one of the challenges that I had in my career, I was going along at Sun Sentinel, being promoted, progressively more responsible positions, and then corporate, after 11 years, decided to eliminate all local CFO jobs. And so I had never been out of work in my life, and I was out of work for 6 months, and trying to find the right opportunity. I almost settled a couple of times for an opportunity that really wasn't the right fit for me, because I was kind of getting desperate at the time. And in retrospect, I'm glad I didn't, because I would not have been successful, and because I wasn't passionate about those opportunities. I was worried about, bringing money into the household. And then I was fortunate to see this opportunity at Aarp, and I said, oh, I can stay in media in a company that is not worried about kind of cutting their way to prosperity, which is unfortunately where a lot of the newspapers were, as you know, kind of at the time. So it was a challenge at the time, but kind of I like to say I bounced forward, and it's made me a more thoughtful and better leader. So wanted to share that with the group.
Yeah, I think you hit on something about the passion and being passionate about what you're doing, because we spend so much time doing it. And I love the path. It's not a linear path. I think I've always said I envied those kids that in second grade said, I'm going to be a doctor, I'm going to be a teacher. They knew exactly what their path was. I didn't. I mean, people say, how did you do your career? And I go, accidentally, I guess. I don't know. It was about making connections at every single opportunity. It was about someone who had known me that said, this is an opportunity for you. Would you consider this? And it is about, you talked about it, that risk taking. I always viewed at every point in my career where I needed to make a decision, every single one of them, there was a path that would have been the safe path, that would have been sort of continue to do what I had already been doing. And there was a path that I hadn't taken. So for example, when I went to leave United Airlines at that time wanted me to either go to Chicago or New York or San Francisco, but my next path to my next position, higher position, required me to leave South Florida. And for me, that was a non-negotiable. And I had an opportunity to go, and it was a great opportunity to stay within the travel and tourism sort of industry and sort of continue to do what I had done at the airport, but do it for the cruise lines. Would have been beautiful. But I said, I already know that within 6 months, I will have already instituted, because they wanted me to do what I had done at the airport in terms of customer service and apply that. And I said, but where am I learning? And at the same time, I had this opportunity to come into the media world. And I had been in finance and I had been in operations, but I had never been in direct sales. And I said, you know what? What's the worst that can happen? A lot of things, but, and I was the primary.
I think about those.
The primary, money in the household. I was a single mom with a child. So, but I took that, and it was an opportunity to expand my abilities and become more rounded as a leader, which I think if you're looking to say, how do I continue to grow, is you can either be the best in a very narrow, or you can become more knowledgeable about different areas. I mean, you had finance, you had operations, you had the media side. That makes you a very well-rounded leader to lead your company as you're doing now. Did you you talked a little bit about a time you almost failed. We never would like to talk about our failings or the mistakes we made, but we can learn a lot from those.
So maybe not an outright failure, but a stumble. So after I was with Tribune for 5 years, and like you, I felt like I had done the job that they had hired me to do. And so I started talking to my then manager about what was next for me. And he came up with an odd answer, so I thought at the time. He said, well, the CFO position at Daily Press is open. And I said, okay, undergrad, econ, poli-sci, graduate school, marketing. Okay, I had a minor in finance, but have you forgotten I don't have a CPA, and so why are you recommending me to go into a CFO role? And he said, look, Robyn, they're not going to expect you to close the books. They're looking for a CFO with a business mind to help the CEO run the business and to have audit oversight. It's more big picture. We're not asking you to pull out your T accounts and balance the books. So with great trepidation, I applied for that position and I was hired. And I struggled for probably the first 3, 6 to 9 months. But I kind of found my footing, and I think I turned out to be a great CFO, and so much so that I had that conversation about the budget that I related earlier that got me noticed by the Howard at the CEO of Sun Sentinel, and it was a good career path for me. And that's another example of people seeing something in you that you don't necessarily see in yourself. So I would tell people not to limit themselves by the written words on their resume. It's like what I have done before, similar to what you said. How can I parlay the skills that I've acquired in this one industry to another industry? And then you have to kind of sell yourself and to show people that you have a vision of how to move this next business forward. So don't ever limit yourself by what you have done.
So this is, I'm going to take a question that's been posed to us. Okay. And it says, we both demonstrate a high level of curiosity in our professional careers. And that's been an important part of our successes. So when you add people to your team during the interview process, are there any favorite questions you might have that sort of like, how do you measure somebody when you're bringing? They're in either their intellectual curiosity, or how do you measure, are they going to be a good fit for your team?
Yeah, you answer that question first if you think, and I'll think about.
I always, one of the hardest things is I think that as leaders, and I've just gone through this with one of my very, very excellent leaders on my team now, is we tend to gravitate to people that maybe have our same skill sets. And I always say, I force myself to say, what are my gaps? And I'm looking to fill the gaps. I don't want a team of people that are going to think like me or bring the same experiences as me to the table. I want the greatest diversity of thought at the table, because I want people to sort of always be pushing the envelope and questioning how our way forward. So I do a lot of questions, sort of trying to probe, and I try before we start the interview process, and I've really gone to panel interviews, because I find that you then get a consistency of thought over a number of candidates. And I've learned to, if I don't feel good about anybody who's coming, it is better to hold off and not fill a position than to get desperate and fill it with someone who's not the right cultural fit to the organization.
Yeah, so we too do panel interviews for the exact same reason. Someone sees something that someone else, screening by HR, and then 1 or 2 panel interviews. And the other thing that we've tried to do is ask people to have a blind submission of kind of what their vision is for the role and how they would handle it, and if they see challenges, certainly for internal candidates, but in general, even for external candidates. And it really has helped us increase the diversity, because, people, you're right, want people, or too frequently, want people with the same background and who kind of they feel comfortable with. And you may surprise yourself when you kind of have the blind interview. And this came up because not many women were being selected for first chairs in orchestras. And so many orchestras, I think the Boston Philharmonic started doing blind interviews literally behind a curtain. And the number of women and minorities increased substantially. And I'm not saying anyone was trying to redline anyone, but, just the appearance of what someone in an orchestra looks like. So we try and kind of have a blind interview in that manner.
Yeah. I think, like, for example, I'm very comfortable talking numbers and being in the financial space, but I don't need somebody who's strong at that, because I'm strong at that. I want somebody who's maybe very, very creative. So I always look and say, let's probe to look at what are the things we need more of. But also identify the areas that, hey, we got this covered in this area, as we look at that. And I love that area. Can't always be a blind interview, but we do a lot of having people present cases, and we give them cases just to get their ways, because sometimes interviews, how are you thinking? How do you write? How do you express yourself? How do you take a problem? And, it doesn't have to be right. I just want to have you sort of talk to me how your brain works a little bit. So, I want to encourage, if there's any questions, if anybody wants to put them in the chat box, and I'll put them up for Robyn. But, if you had an opportunity, to sort of go back to your young self back at the Washington Post and say, Robyn, I just got to tell you, if you do one thing or 2 things or 3 things, these are my learnings. Yeah. That if you had known back then, would you have done something different?
I'm not so sure that I would do much different, but I would say to myself, again, I think I mentioned, take risks. I would say find mentors as well as mentor others, because I think that you get good learnings on both sides. I think practice inclusivity. We've talked a lot about that during this conversation, and resilience. again, your career path doesn't always, and it's okay to not know when you're 4 years old that you want to be a doctor, because I think most of us don't, and most of us don't even know what what's next is, and that's okay. To explore different things and not be sure of, this is what I'm going to do in 5 years. So I really never liked that question. What's your career look like in 5 years and 10 years? It's like, I don't know. I wouldn't know what it looks like right now. So kind of be open to the possibilities. And I think that I did that for the most part, but not to go into it with such trepidation.
Yeah, and I would say, I would add, I have all of those. And I also would tell myself, don't sweat the small stuff. I'm by nature sort of a perfectionist. And so I would sort of stress over things that would occupy my brain that now in retrospect really weren't significant. I viewed them as, oh, this could be a potential career killer, and they weren't. And sometimes we need to step back and view the longer run, and they're not about individual instances. Yeah, don't stress the small stuff, because most of it is small stuff.
I haven't quite learned that lesson yet, because
I haven't. I have to remind myself all the time.
Because I still sometimes sweat the small stuff, and then you have a conversation, and whoever you're afraid of sharing this news with says, okay, and that was it. And you're up all night thinking about how the person was going to receive it. And it's like, I wasted so much time and energy on something that, didn't really make a difference in the long run.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. Oh, those sleepless nights. And afterwards you're going, why did I do that? So I want to thank you, Robyn, for this exchange. It's been delightful. I hope to see you in person soon. And I'm going to turn it over, Bob. I think we're ready to turn it over to you.
Thank you very much, Alex. I've enjoyed our conversation, and we will meet in person, not virtually, one day.
Alex, thank you so much. Awesome job moderating, and Robyn, thank you as well. This leadership series, especially this morning, is a real testament to technology and our new, I call it work style, because I haven't come up with a better phrase yet. You touched on it during your conversation, how we're blending remote versus in-person interaction. But you guys are in different parts of the country right now, and we're able to bring you together for our South Florida audience, which speaks volumes of the gains we've made in technology. I want to thank again our sponsors who are listed on the screen, and especially our media sponsor, the South Florida Business Journal. Melanie Dickinson has been a supporter of this idea since the very beginning when Gail brought the idea to her. We really appreciate their not only their support and promotion of this, but also in their excerpts of these leadership series conversations. In today's issue of the South Florida Business Journal, which you receive on Friday, it'll include an in-depth look at how South Florida's office market is reporting strong resurgence post-COVID, and how the region's leading developers say the steady pipeline of relocations is only getting stronger and could result in a market office boom unlike one seen in decades. So challenging some of the fears that we were feeling back in March and April of 2020 about what the new work style would look like. Also, make sure you see on the July 16th issue, what I mentioned just a minute ago, the South Florida Business Journal will do a story on the highlights of today's session. Today's session will be posted online next week, along with each of the other speaker series events at gflalliance.org/speaker series. I encourage you, if you haven't heard the previous leadership series, they all have gems, and like today's, this gets old saying, but they seem like they get better and better with each group. So again, look for that online. Please be sure to join us for our next Leadership Speakers Series event on September 10th, which will feature father and son conversation about leadership and passing the torch from one generation to the next, and leadership within a growing national company headquartered in Broward. Two well-known folks, Keith Koenig, CEO and owner of City Furniture, one of our founding CEO Council members. He serves as co-chairman of our CEO Council, or vice chairman, and his son, Andrew Koenig. Andrew is, carving his own path, which I admire. We work together in a couple of nonprofits that Andrew is actually taking the lead on, not surprisingly, very much like his family tradition. That's going to be a great conversation between Andrew and Keith. And if you've not met either of them, this will be a good opportunity for you to meet them. So please put on your calendar Friday, September 10th, 9 a.m. We look forward to seeing you all. Thanks again for spending an hour with us this morning. Please enjoy your weekend. Again, that fun is a big part of what brings joy to work and recharge. And we will see you in September. Thanks again.